Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode I lost count. I think it's 23 of the Pop Punk Podcast with me, T Will Official, and my GS co-host, Mr. Daddy Mush. Say what's up in 2021, Mr. Daddy Mush.
What's up, everybody? How's it going?
And today's episode, we have a little bit to talk about. It's 2021. New year, a whole bunch of new music to come out in said year. But before we really delve deep into 2021, I just wanted to take an episode and take a look back on 2020 and like the releases that came out. Talk about our favorites, our least favorites, kind of like we did in the Spotify episode, but this is more like us talking rather than just like what Spotify said our favorites were. This is like more like our favorites. Take a look back, talk about, like our favorite surprises of the year, like what we didn't really like in the year. And yeah, we got a really good episode. I'm really excited for today's episode. But of course, before we do it, it's tradition. We haven't done it in 2 weeks. Actually, no. Before we start even that, I had something I wanted to say. So if you're watching this on the T Will Official channel on YouTube, right? We're going to be moving all the episodes of the podcast to its own dedicated channel. We're going to be doing that. I'll be keeping you guys posted with it. It's not going to happen tomorrow. I'm thinking February 1st is when I'll shut everything off on this channel and completely switch over to the next channel. I haven't created an account yet. I will let you guys know as soon as I create an account. Like the channel name, I'll link it in the description of this episode and all upcoming episodes. And then yeah, so I'll leave the episodes up for now, just so you guys like have a chance to be like, oh shit, like let it process and then go follow the new channel. But the T Will Official channel, I am gonna be kind of putting more effort into like creating more like of other types of content. And I just figured with the podcast episodes on the channel too, it could get a little messy. So I'm going to, just figured to keep it cleaner. It's going to have its own channel. I'm going to move everything over. And then the T Will Official channel is going to be like, I have a whole bunch of content ideas that I think is going to be really fun. And if you are interested in it, stay subscribed and you might enjoy what you like. But if you're only here for the podcast, that's cool too. But yeah, stick around. You might enjoy some of the content I put out in the coming months. So yeah, February 1st, I believe, is going to be when I completely move everything over. Right before, if all goes according to plan, I believe February 2nd's episode will be episode 26. That will be the first new episode on the channel dedicated strictly to the podcast. So that's the only real announcement we had this week. So with that out of the way, we haven't done this in 2 weeks. It's tradition. What have you been listening to this week, sir?
I've been listening to more of the usual. My good afternoon on Spotify said I've been listening to my jams playlist. So that could be any random assortment of 12 hours of music that I generally enjoy. But I also been listening to a lot of Saves a Day, Stay What You Are, and Newfound Glory's Catalyst in the car rides, going to work or just other places. And I've been getting back into Census Fails, if there's a light, it will find you, and they're being deep into their Life Is Not a Waiting Room album as well. And I guess, spoiler alert, I've been listening to a crap ton of If I Die First, which is something I'll touch more upon later in the episode.
Very nice. So yeah, a lot of the status quo. Makes sense. I enjoy it. Don't mess with what works, right?
I mean, I've been listening to the same music since like 9, so I mean, nothing's really going to change in a 3-week span, you know what I mean?
Fair enough. For me, I actually have been mixing it up a little this week. I've been on a bit of a hair metal kick. It started out, I was just listening to some random Def Leppard, because for those that don't know, Def Leppard is actually one of my like all-time favorite bands. I know it's weird because they're not a pop punk band, but they're up there for me. So it started out with I was listening to a whole bunch of Def Leppard, and then it just kind of like spiraled into. I went like into the, I guess not really the rabbit hole, and I'll explain why. Because hair metal to me is kind of a lot like metalcore. How I mentioned in the metalcore episode we did, I only really like the extremely popular ones. Because the more underground bands, to me at least, I don't know, maybe I haven't delved deep enough. And if we have any hair metal fans that are like pissed off in the comments, please, you are welcome to try and change my mind. But like all the like underground hair metal that I've listened to is just, to me, it just kind of sounds like not as good versions of like the bands that I like the extremely popular ones. Like I listened to some underground hair metal band, and I'm just like, this. They just sound like Kmart Def Leppard, or
Can I ask?
or like these guys sound like Kmart Poison. Same with metalcore. Like they just sound like a bunch of the underground ones. Just kind of sound like Kmart Killswitch or Kmart As I Lay Dying. That's at least my opinion. Your opinion may vary, and feel free to educate me in the comments.
May I ask you a question about this underground hair metal? Are these bands that were underground in 1983, or are these bands that are making hair metal in the current millennium?
Well, I was talking about in the 80s, but there is hair metal that does exist in the 2000s and the 2010s.
Well, I was just curious to see, what if you're listening to that current gen hair metal.
Well, I do enjoy Steel Panther. But
That's
I think I enjoy them, yeah, because as I heard you saying, they are a little bit more of a novelty than say like Motley Crue. But
Yeah.
I do enjoy me some Steel Panther. And I do also enjoy their newer band. They're called Dirty Penny. I think they actually broke up, but I enjoyed their song Midnight Ride.
Ooh, that sounds like a very hair metal-y song.
Yes,
title.
it does. And if you looked at the band, you would think they were out of a time machine from 1986.
Yeah, I'm looking at them. Oh, they're a band from 05 to 2011.
Yeah, I think they broke up, which is unfortunate. But even then, they kind of do fit the bill of what I'm talking about. A lot of their stuff just sounds kind of a lot like just Motley Crue. But I do enjoy the song Midnight Ride. I'm not gonna lie.
First of all, I do enjoy how they all use stage names.
Oh yes, that's
such as vocalist Matt Bigham uses the name Binge Daniels, which I guess he means he binges Jack Daniels a lot. You got Ian McPherson, who's Johnny Prince. Tyler Molinaro is Tino Vincent, and my personal favorite, Mr. Spencer Joseph, is simply known as Spanky Savage.
I enjoy that.
But
I remember the name Binge Daniels. I kind of forgot the others, but I did remember Binge Daniels.
Yeah, I had to just Google it because I know a lot of these hair metal guys, God forbid they just use their legal names.
Hey, it's all about that image.
Oh, I know.
It's very larger than life music. Contrast to, I would say with pop punk, it's just a lot of normal dudes making, in my opinion, very normal songs. Not that that's a bad thing. Obviously, we have a whole podcast dedicated to pop punk, so we wouldn't be doing that if we didn't like it. But it's just two different types of beasts. You got like the normal guys making their relatively normal music, and then the hair metal is this big, larger than life production.
It's more of a spectacle than just here's a bass guitar and this guy's going to be making music that makes you want to jump. It has to be, a theatrical event, with props, pyrotechnics, crazy lightning sequences that have to synchronize with what song they're playing. It's actually quite insane.
Oh, it is. Let me tell you, I've seen. I know he's not actually technically hair metal, but he's part of like the similar scene. I saw Alice Cooper when he was opening up for Motley Crue, and his stage show, it was just all that shit. Like he had like the coffins coming out. And he had like I think a dude in a Frankenstein costume dancing around. Like I'm pretty sure there was like fake blood everywhere.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It was fucking wild.
Like, do you think he gets like tired of it? God damn it, we don't need these coffins, or is he fully 100% on board that this is nothing he'd rather
I
be
mean, you
doing?
know what? If doing all that shit made me like millions of dollars, I don't think I could ever get tired of it.
Oh, I know, but I'm just thinking, just like, day 35 in a row of the fake of you coming out of a fake coffin.
Well, I mean, it is pretty funny because apparently Alice Cooper, like in real life, is closer to like in Wayne's World where they're talking to him backstage, and he's supposed to be like really like smart and down to earth. That's apparently what he's like in real life. So you know what? You might not be very far off.
Yeah, but also, I was just thinking about like how pop, like quote unquote pop punk special effects are. And I was thinking the one time I saw with the punches in the Wounded Healer, which is literally just an upstairs of a rehab facility in Pittman.
Okay.
And I was thinking about their special effect, and like it wasn't a special effect, obviously, but in the song "Burning at Both Ends," when he says, "So lights out," I remember some mofo took a light switch and just turned off the lights for a little bit and flipped it right back on. I'm saying, but that's the special effects in the pop punk scene. It's just something to do with a light switch. But
God,
yeah, just
the
complete opposite of the hair metal, spectacle.
Yeah, it's a production, and I remember like when Motley Crue actually played, like Tommy Lee came out and did his fucking drum solo where he's like doing like 9 million spins in the air. I remember, I distinctly remember it. I don't know why I remember this, but I distinctly remember one of the songs playing over the loudspeaker when he was doing his drum solo was "Light 'Em Up" by Fall Out Boy.
Interesting.
Very interesting. I don't know why I randomly remember that song and not any of the other songs in his little montage. Just the weird things that stick with you.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, that's just the random stuff that gets deep buried in your subconscious until somebody brings it out.
I mean, I did like the Motley Crue movie though. I thought the Motley Crue movie was pretty, like, it was good, but it was also like pretty funny, which is I think why I wanted to see it in the first place. Like, obviously, I like Motley Crue, being that I enjoy hair metal, but the movie, it just seems like even if it was just like a fictitious story about four random assholes that wanted to start a band, I think I would still like it. If it was like everything else was exactly the same, I think I would still like it. Just because, it's my, like, it has Pete Davidson. I like Pete Davidson. MGK, who, spoiler alert, we probably will be talking about MGK a little bit more when we get to the actual segment of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just fucking hilarious. Because, it goes through all their, like, debauchery from the 80s. But
yes.
But yeah, so we're getting way off course. 13 minutes into our podcast, and we haven't even begun the topic. So I'm gonna just move on with the top 5 this week, which I actually don't really agree with, because I think the top 5 for the most part, there is one song that I do agree with that I've been listening to recently, and you'll be able to tell immediately. But the rest of them, I feel like, is just songs from my top 2020 playlist, which I did listen to it a lot, but these past week or two, I've been going back to just making playlists and just listening to a whole bunch of like random music. I don't feel like I listen to these songs in particular, but yeah, we're gonna play a game called Guess Which One Is Not Like the Others.
Okay.
So we have Shoebox Memories by Better Luck Next Time, Ride the Wind by Poison, Cross My Heart by Homegrown, Your True Colors by Fight Fair. Actually, that one might be a little true, because I've been listening to a lot of Fight Fair recently. A little more on the California Kick sign, because, spoiler alert, we may be reviewing that in the near future. But I've been listening to a lot of, like, Settle the Score as well. Answer the Phone by Sugar Ray, and then, because we turn it into a top 7 every week, Awkward Conversations by 5 Year Plan, and Trophy Room by City Lights.
Very nice.
So you can obviously guess which one was not like the others.
Yes, obviously, the Poison.
But I mean, I do enjoy that song quite a bit. It's very upbeat, and as you know, I just enjoy upbeat music.
Yeah.
So, with that out of the way, we can get into the main topic, which is a look back on 2020, because it has been a weird year, like, outside of music. So, and it's also been a weird year inside of music. artists that I never in a million years would have thought would make pop punk albums made pop punk albums. Um, Obviously, the biggest offender of that would probably be MGK, who, as you know, as everybody knows, he was a rapper for the longest time. That's how I've always remembered him. And when I was like a teenager, right, when he was first like emerging onto the scene, I don't even remember him being in like the alternative hip hop scene. Like my first exposure to MGK was on like he was featured on a DMX song. So he was like pretty far removed from pop punk, and then not this year because it's 2021, but last year he just makes a pop punk album, and it's actually fucking pretty good.
Yeah, the MGK album was definitely a shocker, and it definitely gets bumped up due to reasons I mentioned in our review that you could watch months ago. But the MGK album, it definitely has some good bangers on there. It definitely is it's not my favorite album of the year. I would say it definitely has probably a top 5 song of the year, but definitely not my favorite album of the year. But what
Oh,
for hopefully,
go ahead.
but with everything about the album, I think it's definitely a positive direction. And what
Yeah.
also do you like? What other stuff did you
And
like in
well,
2020?
before we do that, I just wanted to say real quick. I think, and I'm not gonna touch too much into this because I think there's enough to talk about here that we're gonna do. We're gonna give this its own episode in a couple weeks. But I the MGK album, in my opinion, I think has kickstarted a like pop punk revolution, so to speak, or a new era that I think I've already seen a lot of artists kind of take place in. Artists that like a couple years ago might have done emo rap, just going full blown pop punk, and just a couple newer people that are just like that Jaden guy from TikTok. His song "So What" is actually really fucking good. Um, Came out in 2020. Juice World. I mean, I don't think his latest album, may he rest in peace. I don't think his latest album was a pop punk album by any stretch of the means. But the song "Man of the Year" is pretty freaking close. To the point where if a band was to cover it and make it pop punk, the only thing I think they would have to change would just be put a little more distortion on the guitars. And then boom, you got a pop punk song. And even like like the hit off the album, right? Come and Go. I can definitely hear the pop punk influences. Not to mention it also he collabs with Marshmello, who had his own kind of like pop punk esque song, but like not really a couple years ago. Which now I'm looking back on it, he was probably ahead of the game, just a little too ahead. With his song "You and Me," which was in my top songs of 2020. It's actually a pretty good song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's weird seeing like kind of pop punk make its kind of like little resurgence into the mainstream, even if it's not exactly the same as it was right in like 2001. It's just kind of weird seeing it make its little bit of a comeback. But I don't want to go too deep into that because I don't want to take away from when we do its own episode in a couple weeks. But then on top of that, there's also been some albums come out this year by bands that have been around for a while, like Goldfinger had an album, Less Than Jake had an album. If I say this year, guys, I just want to just preface this. I'm probably going to say this year a lot because at the time of recording, we're 8 days into 2021. So my brain is still like used to saying this year to 2020. So I just want to preface, if I say this year, I meant last year. But so like we had Goldfinger put out an album, Less Than Jake put out an album, New Found Glory put out an album. Mast put out an album. I keep forgetting about that one because that one was in January.
Yeah, All Time Low, which I still have to listen to.
Yeah, I got it. I listened to one song off of it, and I remember actually thinking it was pretty good.
Yeah, a lot of
like it's not.
It's
yeah, it's not on the same level as like So Wrong It's Right, but it's a lot better than like. I don't even remember the names of their albums from like the mid 2010s. But it's definitely like a step above their 2010s albums, at least from the songs I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, I still have to listen to it. Yeah, well, the albums you're thinking of is Future Hearts, Last Young Renegade, I believe Don't
Yeah.
Panic, Dirty Work, stuff like
I
that.
think Last Young Renegades was the one I was thinking of because that's the one where I think it had a song in The Sims. Um, and I didn't even know it was All Time Low in The Sims. Because I mean, first of all, they when they put a song in The Sims, they re-record it in the Sims language. Which honestly, I think they just tell the singers in the booth, "Yo, just say any random bullshit you can think of."
Yeah.
Because the Sims language is just like its own fucking um. But I didn't even know it was All Time Low. I forget how I found out because I think I was trying to find one song that sounded like Avril Lavigne on the pop station in that game. I was trying to find it to listen to it on YouTube and maybe see if it was a real song. Which it wasn't, but I know they do that. Clearly, they do that. They did it as early as like The Sims 2. I remember had fucking Plain White Tees.
Very nice.
But it wasn't the song I was looking for. Wasn't a real song. It was recorded for the game. But then I found out that All Time Low had a song, and I was just baffled because it sounded nothing like the All Time Low that like I listened to.
Yeah, I mean on Wikipedia, pop punk is not even listed in the 5 genres on the
that's how
album.
that's how you know something's far removed because Wikipedia fucking lists "I Hate Kate" as pop punk.
I mean, in Wikipedia, the first sentence is Last Young Renegade is a 7th studio album by American pop punk band All Time Low. But if you actually look at the genres on the album, it's pop rock, synth pop, new wave, power pop, alternative. So yeah.
Yeah. That's not to roast it. I'm sure it's a good album for people that like that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was baffled because it sounded nothing like the All Time Low I was used to. I'm used to their first 3 albums. But yeah, but then I heard the song. I think it was "Getaway Green" off of their newest album, and I remember thinking like, "Yo, this is actually pretty." It's still pretty poppy, but like I think All Time Low's always been kind of on like the pop side. So that's really not anything new. But it had like that like punk edge to it as well, to where I would call it a pop punk song.
Yes, I need to listen to that album just out of sheer curiosity, just because I consider it All Time Low just to me a relic of. They have a few good songs from 07, 08, but since I hear that it's very nostalgic and it got critical acclaim, I might have to dabble in it after this podcast is done.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I completely forgot about it until you brought it up. But now that I remember it, I did want to listen to it. Because I did like what I've heard off of it so far. Because they did a little like sampler EP where it was like 3 or 4 songs off the upcoming album, and I think there was only like one song on there that I didn't like. So like, that's a good sign.
Yeah, for sure. So what would you say was your favorite album of 2020?
That's a good question because I think it depends. Because if we're talking about the music itself, it would probably be Goldfinger's album because I like how it's, as we said in the Goldfinger review that we did 2 episodes back. It's not just a safe album from a like a band that's been around for like 30 years. It's actually something that I put on. Like, we're past the new album hype because the album's been out for like a month, and I'm still putting on like my favorite songs from that album. Versus like when with just like trying to think of an example, like when Bowling for Soup puts out a new album, right? I listen to it because I do like Bowling for Soup, but a lot of their new stuff is like very samey and pretty safe. Like if you've listened to Drunk Enough to Dance, you pretty much listen to their entire discography. And like I listened to it for like a week or two to be like, oh yeah, new songs, and then I just kind of go back to listening to Drunk Enough to Dance. But like with Goldfinger, I'm still listening to Infinite. I'm still listening to Cannonball. I'm still listening to Standing on the Beach. I think it's actually a very good album. But if we're talking about beyond the music and what like I think it represents, so to speak, I know that might sound a little corny, but if we're talking about like what it represents, then my favorite album of the year would probably be Tickets to My Downfall by MGK.
Yeah,
just because just because it completely baffled me that MGK of all people, like I said, I haven't followed him. I do think he went a little more into alternative hip hop in his more recent albums, but like I said, like I just would have never expected that because when he was coming out the gate, like he was featured on DMX tracks. Like it was so like far removed from pop punk that it just blew my mind, and then it blew my mind a second time when I realized it was actually pretty good. Like, yeah, it's got some safe songs on there. It's got some songs on there that really aren't pop punk, but, you just kind of say it is because it's like a pop punk album. But then there's really good songs like, like Concert for Aliens and Forget Me Too. Both of which are my top songs of 2020 playlist.
Yeah.
And just, kind of what it represents, because it represents, like, the pop punk revival.
I mean, it was number 1 on the Billboard 200.
Exactly. So, I think what it represents might elevate that above Goldfinger, even though, like, Goldfinger might be my favorite just from, like, a listening standpoint. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, definitely.
But that's me. What about you? What would you say your favorite release
album
of the year?
See, now this is a complicated thing because I guess it changes. It kind of changes quite a bit. I guess if I'm talking like, well, obviously I'm extremely, 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 extremely biased to those Newfound boys, but I'm gonna say that for another category I'm gonna be bringing up. Because it's Newfound Glory. I love Newfound. I will always buy a Newfound. I get the deluxe bundle with every single release they do. Like, for example, I have that I have Forever and Ever times Infinity. I have a coffee mug and a notebook that I bought from them for no apparent reason. It's just sitting there.
I just want to say real quick, I don't mean to cut you off. I keep thinking that album's fucking called Greatest of All Time. I don't know why.
I mean, that's like probably the best song on the album. But I want to say that for another topic. Probably my favorite release of 2020 is Mest's Masquerade.
That is a pretty good album. And it's another one, like I said, like with Goldfinger. Like, with Mess, I don't think there's as many songs off of Masquerade that I listen to on a daily basis, like with Goldfinger's Never Look Back. Because Goldfinger's Never Look Back, right? Like, there's at least like 5 songs on that album that are in my regular rotation. And with Mess, I think it's really only the title track. But, but Mess, like, did something different. Like, it's still pop punk, but it's not, the same, like, Destination Unknown from, like, 2001. Like, it's its own thing.
Yeah, like, I definitely feel like if I have to compare it to a previous Mess album, it definitely has more of their self-titled release back in 2003. I feel like that's more of the progression or sound that they were going for, but a bit more serious just because...
Yeah, it's a bit more serious, and it's a bit more modern, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, well, the thing with the Mest album, the Masquerade, that it's like the first true Mest album in like 15 years. Like, so I was just like,
that's true.
So when I was listening to like Masquerade and you hear the homie Jeremiah come on with the vocals, that's when I knew that,
Yeah, it's true, because they did have an Easy Core album in, I want to say 2013. Although Spotify says it's 2014, I believe it was actually 2013.
Yes, 2013.
But it was really just Tony Lovato and then a whole bunch of new guys. Like, the whole rest of the band was just, they quit for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And there was a good song on it. Radio is a good song, and Radio is in my regular rotation. But, yeah, the rest of the album wasn't really that good.
It was actually pretty more bad than...
And I think it was just kind of destined to fail, because, I mean, it was like an Easy Core album in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Which, unfortunately, that was like 3 years too late.
It just wasn't that good in general. So,
yeah, and so it just had a lot of things working against it.
Yeah, I mean, the only, like, I guess, like, cool thing about the album is that what's his face? I think Steve hold up. Never mind, disregard that. I thought it was the, Steve Lovato returned on, like, was in the band for like a few years because he was the original guitar player before Jeremiah came in 1999. It was on the Mo Money Mo 40s album that is kind of
Oh, yeah, yeah. 'Cause isn't that like a ska album?
yeah, but
Yeah, very, very
kind
weird.
of forgotten. Like I keep forgetting that album exists because I always considered wasting time like the debut album for whatever reason, even though it's technically their second album. But I also thought it was just really cool that the original lineup is finally on recording for the first time in 15 years. And there is some songs I still listen to off that album quite regularly. Obviously, the title track "Masquerade" I like a lot. I also enjoyed the Jeremiah songs such as "The Numbers" and "There's No Basement in the Alamo." For whatever reason, I just love that song.
No Basement the Alamo. My brain, I haven't listened to the song in a while, so I could be very far off. But when I first heard it, my brain, I just couldn't stop thinking. It sounds to me kind of like Feldman era Blink, which is a little weird considering like Feldman did do Wasting Time and Destination Unknown, or at least I know he did Destination Unknown. I think he did
I
Wasting
think he
Time as
did.
well.
I think I think he also did the Untitled, and he also did a Photograph. So it would make sense.
But
Yes,
it's
he also
funny because like he doesn't produce Masquerade, at least not to my knowledge. But then No Basement the Alamo sounds like something if Mest hooked up with like modern day Feldman.
yeah, because Feldman and Mest was Feldman's OG like buddies, I guess, because
They were the original 5 Seconds of Summer.
yeah, like I
Yeah,
mean every
for those that don't know, 5 Seconds of Summer's first two albums, the pop punk albums, are actually both produced by John Feldman. Or I think the second album was co-produced. The first album might have been co-produced as well. I don't know. I need to take a look. But like She Looks So Perfect, that's a John Feldman song. And then the song Money is also John Feldman, and Money's funny because Money's totally like a Feldman. It's very Feldman esque.
yes, it's just it oozes a Feldy. Yeah, so yeah, Masquerade was just the OG. No, Mest was the OG Feldy boys, just because every classic Mest lineup album outside of Masquerade, to my knowledge,
Oh,
is a film in production.
I would like to apologize. I'm on Wikipedia right now, and Feldman was not a producer on She Looks So Perfect. My bad.
Now we know.
Now we know,
yeah,
but he did co-produce their first two albums when they were pop punk.
yes, but yeah. So Mess's Masquerade is probably like one of my favorites, just because it's like it's nostalgic, but it's just not good because it's nostalgic. There's actually stuff that I actually like in 2020, 2021. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm actually glad that you bring that up because I think that segues into the next question I wanted to ask is what would your least favorite release of 2020 be?
Once again, that's hard for me to say because I don't generally like go out of my way to find music that I dislike. You know what I mean?
I mean, me either, but there was few, I don't know if I would say disappointments, but there was a few albums that I think were less than stellar that I listened to this year or last year.
Um.
I'll tell you
Let me.
what, I'll give you some time to think. I'll go ahead and say my least favorite, which is a spoiler alert because we actually are going to be reviewing this album in a couple of weeks as well. Less Than Jake's new album is probably my least favorite release of the year because it's just like how you said with Mest, right? Like it's a nostalgic album, but it's also beyond the nostalgia. It's pretty good. Same
Yeah,
with
for
Never
sure.
Look Back by Goldfinger. Like beyond the nostalgia, it's just pretty good. Less Than Jake's new album, whose name I forget the name of the album. It's nostalgic, but it's like, and it's not bad, but it's just really incredibly safe and samey sounding. Um, like I have gone on record saying I do like Less Than Jake's newer music more than I like their older music because their newer music to me is basically just pop punk with horns. And that is true for the most part, but there's really nothing that this album does that I can't just get off of like In With the Out Crowd or like Anthem. I mean, I guess this album has horns, which In With the Out Crowd doesn't really have horns all that much, but there are some horns on the album. But I mean, Anthem has horns, and there's really not a whole lot that this album does that their like mid 2000s run of albums don't do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's a spoiler alert because we didn't review it yet, and we will be. That's actually kind of why we postponed it, is because we had originally planned it to air when the Goldfinger episode did, but then I saw Goldfinger like surprise dropped an album, and I had listened to the Less Than Jake album and was like, this needs more time to sit with me because the songs all sound very samey. So no, I will need to do some more listening to it, but yeah, I don't know. It's just, and it's not to say it's bad. It's just very safe. Like, it's the type of album you listen to once, maybe like a couple times over the span of like a week to be like, oh yeah, new Less Than Jake. And then you're just kind of done with it, you know?
Yeah, as they say, it's a Less Than Jake album for Less Than Jake fans.
Pretty much.
But now I guess now since you're doing that, I kind of came up with a coherent thought of for a response to your question.
Okay.
First of all, I didn't even listen to the Less Than Jake album, and I haven't listened to the All Time Low albums. Just spoiler alert. So maybe I might like them or dislike them enough. So just take with a grain of salt. But my least favorite album. No, this is kind of going to butt heads for a bit, but of all the stuff that came out in 2020 that I listened to on the regular, which honestly wasn't a lot because most bands push things back.
That's true. A lot of bands did push things back this year or last year.
So it's very slim pickings, honestly. But real quick before I give you that answer, I know you say you love the MGK album, and there are some songs that are fantastic, but in the all encompassing thing, there was a lot of songs that, in my opinion, that were kind of clunkers or just kind of meh at best that I will not look back around. But the other album I'm just gonna name drop too is an album we forgot to mention as well because it came out earlier in the year pre-COVID. It was the Brain Pain album by 4 Year Strong.
Oh yeah, I listened to a few songs off that. I didn't listen to the full album, so I don't want to put it in as like a bad album until I've heard all of it. But yeah, I really didn't like the songs that I heard off of that album.
Yeah,
It's like weird. Like, it doesn't sound like, 4 Years Strong, and I know that might sound a little hypocritical coming from me because I just talked about how Less Than Jake sounds exactly the same, but like, it just sounds so different and so weird. I just wasn't really into it. I think I heard the title track and one other song, and I didn't like really either of them. And I really liked the album they put out in like 2015 with yeah, with like Go Down in History and like I Hold Myself in Content. We all float down here. That has a fucking awesome riff. Man, Brain Pain is the songs I heard. Okay, I want to preface that because I don't want to be spreading propaganda saying it's a bad album when I only heard like 2 songs off of it. But yeah, those 2 songs just did like nothing to me. They made me not really interested in listening to the full album, you know?
Yeah, and that's why I kind of didn't really get too deep into it, just because for whatever reason, it's like the MGK album, there's like 2 or 3 like great songs, and then the rest to me are kind of like I listen to them and they don't do much for me, but at least that album has like stuff that I generally enjoy quite heavily. The 4 Year Strong album is just kind of more of it's a whole lot of meh.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't want to rank it below Less Than Jake because I have listened to the full Less Than Jake album and I haven't listened to the full Brain Pain. But I feel like if the rest of the album is anything like the 2 songs I heard, it probably would be lower than Less Than Jake because, like I said, Less Than Jake is not bad. It just doesn't do anything for me that previous albums that they did already haven't done.
Yes.
Um,
and you know what, I'm also pretty embarrassed to admit too, that because this is one of my favorite post-hardcore bands and they only come second behind Senses Failed, but Like I knew they dropped an album in 2020, but I didn't listen to it though. It was the A Beautiful Place to Drown by Silverstein.
Oh yeah, I heard that. I didn't hear the album. I listened to the song Infinite. And I mean, it was all right. It wasn't the greatest. It wasn't as bad as Brain Pain though. But
Okay,
it's
well,
definitely not as I don't think it's on par with past Silverstein releases.
yeah, I mean, I'm
But
just curious because on Wikipedia it has it down as post-hardcore and pop punk.
and again, I don't want to speak for the whole album, but if the whole album is like the single Infinite that I listened to, not to be confused with Goldfinger's Infinite, if the whole album is like that, then it would kind of go definitely above Brain Pain, but probably below Less Than Jake's album.
Okay, because I'm just curious because they do have a song called "Take What You Give" that features Pierre Bouvier from Simple Plan, so I'm really interested in hearing that one.
Yeah, I want to hear that too. I think I remember I heard that and I liked it.
Well, it's Pierre Bouvier, so it has to be a pop punk song. It'll be kind of weird if Pierre's on a post-hardcore track.
Yeah.
They,
yeah.
yeah, but my least favorite probably would be the Brain Pain album by 4 Years Strong. I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, now we're gonna delve into. We talked about albums.
Okay, I'll ask you what your most disappointed album was before we go into there.
Most disappointed? That's a good question. It probably would be not to do a cop out answer, but it probably would be Less Than Jake again because Lie to Me, the single, was actually really good. Like it was in my top songs of fucking 2020 when the album came out in December. Just because like they put the single out first, and I liked the single so much that I listened to it a lot. And the single was like really really good, but then the single was kind of like the best that the album had to offer. Like the rest of it was just kind of samey and bleh compared to Lie to Me. So there are a few albums that I do want to listen to that I haven't yet, such as Silverstein's new album and Brain Pain and everything. But yeah, at the risk of putting out a cop out answer, I think Less Than Jake would probably be my biggest disappointment too. Just because I feel like if Lie to Me wasn't such a good single, I could have maybe like curbed my expectations a little bit and maybe like, you know, like I wouldn't feel like so let down. That it's just a safe Less Than Jake album. You know, it sounds like it could have came out in 2003, you know, blah, blah, blah. But Lie to Me definitely was the best that the album had to offer. So it kind of sucks that it was the single because it had me expecting songs just as good or better when the rest of it was just kind of, this exists.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. I mean, my most disappointed album would be, and this is, I guess, once again, I think I kind of spoiled this earlier in the episode, but it would be a very bold take coming from me, but the New Found Glories Forever plus Ever times Infinity was a little disappointing, and that's upsetting because
that's heavy words coming from you.
Yeah, it's just because, you know, everything, I'm a very, very biased, and obviously anybody who knows me knows that Newfound Glory is just kind of one of my personality traits at this point. But for whatever, like, I think it just had a lot going against it, and just the situations surrounding the album, and just kind of different, like, for example, because I remember back in February, the entire album got leaked. Somebody leaked the entire album, and it came out in like June. So, but for 4 months before the album even came out, I listened to it all. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Away a lot of the hype, the expectations, just kind of it took away the kind of the positive experience. Just kind of like, oh, I'm just listening to this because somebody leaked it. And two, I guess the first song I heard from the album, Greatest of All Time, kind of almost how you felt with the Less Than Jake, that it was just like it is a banger. It's such a banger. Spoiler alert, it's probably my favorite song that came out in 2020. And it was just so awesome in my opinion. And the rest of the songs, I mean, there are some songs that I truly do enjoy, like Himalaya, Trophy, and
yeah, and you know,
a couple of other.
I feel like that's the problem with safe albums, right? Is there is songs that if you're like in the mood to listen to specifically, like, okay, I'm gonna listen to something from 2020 Newfound Glory, right? There are songs that are like good, or like in my case, Less Than Jake. If I was willing to like pick and choose through the album, there probably would be songs that I enjoy. But it's just like, yeah, it's like why do I want to listen to this when I can listen to like Look What Happened or The Ghosts of Me and You or
Yeah.
fucking Still Life franchise, Rest of My
Mhm.
Life. All these songs are Less Than Jake certified bangers.
And there's a couple of other things, I guess, I think going around it that kind of disappointed me in a sense. Well, for one, I don't know if you remember this or not, but in the tour they did in 2009, the Screen Cheer Town tour when they were touring for the From Your Screen Cheer Stereo Part 3 album, they gave out these like sampler sampler disc of like 7 songs of like two songs from Resurrection, 2 songs from Makes Me Sick, 2 songs from the pretty much 2 songs from each of their Hopeless Records releases, and they also had a demo of the song Puzzles, which is a new song, and I thought that song was amazing. I think it's actually better than anything on Forever plus Ever Times Infinity, so I was kind of disappointed because I think that song was so awesome.
Oh, and it's not on the
Uh,
album.
no, it's not on the album, and I think it's better than all the songs that are on the album. So I was a little upset just because I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm getting next year. This is freaking awesome. This is going to be their best album
Oh,
since
yeah,
Now Without a Fight.
they pulled you with a little clickbait.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that kind of disappointed me too was producer they had on the album was Steve Evans, which if you're familiar with Mr. Evans' work, he was pretty much the main producer for like every Saves the Day album. Like he was the producer and engineer for Can't Slow Down, Through Being Cool, Stay What You Are, and just pretty much all the Saves the Day albums. But if he produced Through Being Cool, that's awesome. And he also produced, engineered Homegrown's Kings of Pop, and he also was the mixer on Alistair's Last Stop Suburbia as well. And he also produced uh, Census Fails, Let It Unfold You. So I'm thinking with like that track record behind him plus Newfound Glory, I was expecting something pretty amazing. Um, and also Mr. Steve Evans, his magnum opus was that he played bass guitar on Vanilla Ice's Bipolar.
Well, I guess I don't know how such talent could go. So I guess not wrong, but so just like this is the best you could come up with.
Yeah. You
But
know
I
what I mean?
guess I guess you know what though, it prepares you for Newfound Glory album like 13 or 14, whatever they're on next, with
Yeah,
producer John Feldman.
oh, God forbid. Uh, but
Just
but
just
my
for everybody, that's just a joke. I don't know who their next producer is gonna be. If it is John Feldman, I'm gonna be putting in the comments that I called it. But that was just a joke. They don't have anything confirmed.
yeah, but then my next, I guess, thing kind of going against the album is and I feel like this is the main reason why most bands like pushed albums back is because they couldn't tour for the album.
Which makes sense. I mean, I understand that because touring is where like most bands make their money.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
like
so
the amount you get from Spotify is so very little.
yeah, so it's just kind of like when I can't hear these songs live, I don't really feel that kind of almost a personal connection to it, singing along in the crowd or some songs just sound more hype live, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I felt with Not Without a Fight because Not Without a Fight was in the same boat that I was like, extremely disappointed with it just because Mark Hoppus produced it and it's Newfound Glory. So it's obviously you put those two together, it should be a masterpiece. And I was always like disappointed by it. But then after seeing it like live multiple times when they played those albums all in full in their 20th anniversary tour, like Not Without a Fight is probably like, dare I say, probably my third favorite Newfound album, probably the second most listened Newfound album I have. So I'm thinking that maybe down the road, after I hear these songs live, I could reverse my opinion. You know what I mean? After the initial disappointment and everything kind of subsides.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I mean, just I guess we'll see when we next time we go see Newfound Glory live, which should be probably whenever the world opens up, because as we know, they tour like literally every single year, and I think we've seen them like every single year,
or multiple times a year.
multiple times a year. Yes, we have. I remember that.
Yeah, they're going on tour with Simple Plan. They're still going to be their next tour is still going to be with Simple Plan, which is going to be awesome.
I can't wait. Simple Plan. I still haven't seen Simple Plan. Like I've seen them, but I saw them at Warped Tour, so I didn't really see them. You know what I mean? I'm ready to see like a full. Yeah, it's just kind of like a mashup of their biggest hits. I'm ready to see like a Simple Plan show.
Yeah. And it was also disappointing that in 2020, because Newfound Glory was going to add another tour, was going to be their 20th anniversary of their self-titled album, and as anybody knows, that's my all-time favorite album, so I was upset that didn't happen. But enough about that, though. Continue what you're going to say about songs instead of albums.
Oh, actually, you know what? Before I say that, I want to talk about a few other things.
Okay.
First of all, I guess that's another thing that I guess could be disappointing, not from a music standpoint, but from like a event standpoint, is Ryan Key like didn't become a fifth member of Newfound Glory. Which
yeah,
I remember we were like we were so sure that he was gonna be.
Yeah, now their new buddy is William Pudd, the singer of Cartel.
Yeah, which honestly, like I had assumed because of like how close he was getting with the Newfound Boys, I had assumed that he was like already essentially a fifth member. They were just waiting for some, contractual obligations with Yellowcard to clear up before like they could officially announce him as a member. Because when you're that big of a name, you are a brand more than you're more than just a band. You're a brand, and like legal stuff gets involved. So that's what I had assumed, was it was just some like legal stuff that was preventing him from officially being a member. But yeah, no, now he didn't officially become a member.
That's why it took forever for Matt Skiba to officially become a member of Blink, and that's why in the beginning they were Blink-182 with Matt Skiba, because they had to get Tom DeLonge to like sign off on like things and like deal with legalities and crap like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I guess that's one thing that's disappointing from an event standpoint. Another thing that's not disappointing but leaves me hopeful for the future from an event standpoint. So, I've been pretty vocal before on the podcast about how I'm really not a fan of New Zebrahead. I think it's just straight up, it's either pure thrash metal or like that Sum 41 Does This Look Infected brand of pop punk. I actually think that one of the songs off their new album, I can't remember the name of it, but it's the one that's in Tony Hawk. Legit sounds like a Sum 41 song. But in 2020, a bunch of the guys in the band started a metal side project. I think it's pretty much everybody except Maddie. And that actually leaves me really hopeful. Maddie like weirdly started like a countryside project. Which
well, that's where the money is.
It's weird, but I mean it's still better than Zen Mafia, which is what Justin's up to these days. And unfortunately he roped Greg into it as well. But yeah, so basically everybody in the band besides Maddie started a metal side project, which makes me extremely happy because the metal, like it's all right. I mean, it's probably not anything I would listen to if it wasn't like members from Zebrahead. But I like it because I feel like they can get all their like metal aggression out on Fear No Empire, which is the name of their metal side project. And then the next Zebrahead release, whenever that may be, if that's this year or next year or whenever, might just go back to being pop punk again. Well, I remain hopeful.
Ed is not the drummer of that project as well.
Okay. So it's Ben, Ali, and Dan.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I knew Ben, Ali, and Dan were in there, but then I think I remember you actually saying it was everybody except Maddie. So then I was thinking it was everybody except Maddie. But then, okay, so I'm right. It was just Ben, Ali, and Dan.
Yeah, Ed is not on the drums. They got the guy from Death by Stereo's drummer. I think he's like Mike something.
Okay, which makes sense. because
Yeah,
I do believe that Dan is still technically a member of Death by Stereo.
I believe he is as well.
Um, but yeah, so that just makes me hopeful. Like, even if the music itself is like, it's not the best. I actually don't really think it's that bad, but it's not like the best. It's just basically it's like Death by Stereo if Ali was the singer. Um, and he takes his like rap shouting to a new extreme. He's just straight up shouting on Fear No Empire. But yeah, it just has me excited because it has me hopeful for the next Zebrahead album. Because I gotta tell you, Brain Invaders, I it pains me to say this because I pretty much feel the way about Zebrahead that you do about Newfound Glory. So it does pain me to say this, but Brain Invaders is beyond just safe. Same Brain Invaders, I just really did not like because the best songs on the album were there was like I think one song in the album that was like pretty all right. Majority of the songs in the album are just thrash metal. And then, there's a small majority of the songs on there that sound like that. Like, Does This Look Infected, Sum 41, like, no reason type pop punk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it just wasn't good. And it actually kind of had me rethinking how much I liked Zebrahead for a little bit. It wasn't until I started listening to their old shit again that I was like, okay, this is why these guys are one of my favorites. Because MFZB is amazing. but yeah, basically, if an album by a pop punk band has the word brain in it, it's probably not going to be pretty good. I know Brain Invaders wasn't 2020, but Fear No Empire is 2020, so we're talking about it on this podcast. Do you have any other events in music that really like disappointed you in 2020?
I mean, other than COVID and all the shows being canceled, other than that, I just want to see more bands come out. Really, you know what I mean? Like more true band releases, because I feel like most of the releases in our genre are like, other than like MGK, has mostly been like just bands that have been around for the last 25 years.
Yeah, and I guess that comes out to like I guess it's just tough to gain traction in 2020, and I think that could change with MGK. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out because because like I know like MGK is already established.
Mm-hmm.
I mean I guess Jaden wasn't really established, but that's also not like a band. Jaden's just like a person. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see because I do always see like a lot of newer bands pop up in my like my not my like the Discover Weekly, but like my daily mixes I see them pop up a lot. There was a band that I heard. I think I heard them in 2019, but then they made a new song in 2020. I'm trying to remember their name right now. Hold on. I think it's called The Second After, but I'm gonna go on Spotify and check. And I couldn't remember the name of these guys last time I talked about them. But yeah, The Second After. They have a song this year. It's called Thinking Clear, and it's very, very good. I like it quite a bit. But yeah, it's just really tough to gain traction these days if you're not like already established. Like MGK could do it because even if he was switching up, he was still already very established. And it was such a high profile switch because it's so different.
He also had Travis Barker.
And he also had Travis Barker. But it was just also such a giant switch from what he usually does that like it got people talking.
Yeah, exactly.
But like The Second After, unfortunately, like which pains me because I only know 2 songs by him, but they're 2 very good songs. Just kind of still in that I guess local band territory. Like I only really know them through Spotify because they just showed up in my they showed up in my daily mix. But I mean, that's not really saying much when like you pretty much everybody can put themselves on Spotify. So they are kind of to my knowledge another local band, and it's just really tough to break through that, I guess.
But my biggest like more positive note, considering I'm talking about bands and it's hard to break through. And sure it was more of a side project, but I truly, truly enjoy If I Die First.
Oh yes, now
EP is
that
great.
they're
I know it's not
probably,
pop punk, but still
well, they're not pop punk, but
post-hardcore.
they're post hardcore, which I would say is adjacent.
Yes, it's the same scene. It's
Like
the
the yeah,
same.
same
We're in the same
scene,
country.
and even though they might not have a whole lot of bleed over, there is a lot of bleed over between pop punk bands and post hardcore bands, such
Mm-hmm.
as Census Fail. And
Silverstein.
I would say Silverstein does have quite a few pop punk songs.
I mean, their newest album, Pop Punk, is a second genre.
Yeah. Um, like there's so much bleed over that they post hardcore bands always get mentioned on this podcast.
Yeah, just
Um,
because. Yeah, I mean, Just
and,
Surrender. I mean, they're like they blend the two.
and If I Die First, I definitely want to keep an eye on them because they have the potential. Because Lil Lotus, he's not a nobody. He's like in the emo rap scene, so he's got that like rapper trying actual like rock music, like switch over like novelty to him. And then it's also, I think the backing band is from first to last, obviously minus Skrillex,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken. Somebody, if I'm wrong about that, somebody please correct me. But I know there's at least one or two of the guys in the band are from first to last.
I do know that. Yeah, there's a couple like emo rappers thrown in there with some guys from First to Last in there, and I'm really excited to hear more stuff because a lot of their songs, and not just like Where Needles and Lovers Collide. Like I do enjoy like the other songs on that EP quite a bit too.
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. It really does sound like,
Never
2006.
Live. I know, but yeah. So yeah. So I mean, I'm excited to hear more from that. So I guess that's like my biggest surprise of the year is I'm excited that there's this actual like new group that I generally enjoy that is still in the beginning stages of who they are. You know what I mean? It's not like
Hmm.
a band from '06 that I'm like, oh, I love them in 2002 and they keep making music. So I just keep listening, you know? So I'm really happy that there is more, I guess, new stuff going on with them.
Yeah, and I think that's only going to happen more and more. Which again, don't want to get too into it because we're going to be doing that episode in like 2-3 weeks. But yeah, I think that's going to start happening more and more, which makes me happy. I would say my biggest surprise was definitely the whole MGK thing, because as I've said before, I've said it in the past. I always kind of like had a feeling pop punk and just scene music in general was on its way to a revival. Just because like that's how things seem to work in 20s, like in like 20 years, right? Like 80s music had a bit of a revival in the 2000s. um 90s music, for better or for worse, because I'm gonna be honest, the 90s decade overall is not really a decade I enjoy. The late 90s has some good stuff, but like the early 90s with like grunge and like alternative and stuff, ugh. But the 90s music, for better or for worse, did have a bit of a resurgence in the 2010s. And now it looks like, 2000s music, in particular pop punk, is going to be having a bit of a revival in the 2020s. So, like, I had a feeling it was coming for a while, but I didn't know it was going to happen this fast. Like, it's literally 8 days into 2021. The revival, the seeds have been planted in like 2020, the first year of the decade. I thought it was going to come in like 2022, 2023. So that would probably be my biggest surprise, would be MGK's album not only coming out, but hitting number one.
Yes.
Would probably be my biggest surprise of the year. Another smaller surprise was Goldfinger's Never Look Back, because I knew about it like a couple days before I listened to it, and I was just kind of like writing it off as like, okay, it's probably gonna be just more of like The Knife, more of like that Feldman-y, like factory type pop punk. Which, as I said before, I don't dislike The Knife, but it is kind of funny because I always, when I'm trying to tell people who aren't usually into like John Feldman, or like don't go deep into like the John Feldman lore, I always show them Put the Knife Away as like the control, right? Like, like when you're doing an experiment, you need a control. Put the Knife Away is the control for John Feldman's production style, because it's just pure John Feldman. And the Knife in general just kind of has that, like, you know, like a lot of it just sounds like it would be on Blink's California.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
But then Never Look Back comes out, and like, there's a few songs on the album that sound like they're sequels to songs off of The Knife. Like, I do think The City kind of sounds like Get What I Need, and I do think California on My Mind kind of sounds like Tijuana Sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
But as a whole, it's just like, I guess Charlie coming back must have had an effect on the music, because it doesn't just sound like The Knife. It's, you know, it sounds like kind of like almost like a new sound for Goldfinger. Like, it kind of blends all their eras together.
Yeah.
As we said on the album review. And that to me was a shocker. Just because I initially just kind of wrote it off as, okay, it's probably going to sound like The Knife. Never judge a book by its cover, folks. I learned that time and time again.
Yes. So I guess what are any albums or music that you're excited to hear in 2021?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of just excited to see, like, what happens next, really, because I don't know if the pop punk revival is in full swing. I think the seeds have been planted. They're not being planted; they've been planted. So I can't wait to see, like, the ripple effect that it creates. Because I think that's gonna start. If it's gonna probably start happening this year, I think we're gonna see a bunch of new artists. I don't know if it's gonna particularly be bands. I think it'll probably be a lot of, like, single person artists. But I think we're gonna see a lot more new pop punk in 2021, not just safe albums from, like, old school bands.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And I'm also really excited, as I said earlier. I'm really excited. I don't know if it's gonna be in 2021 specifically, but I'm really excited for Zebrahead's album, next album, whenever that may be.
Fair enough. I think I am definitely most excited for things coming out of the Senses Fail camp.
Yeah, because I remember you saying their next album is a concept album. Half the songs are in major and half the songs are in minor, like major key and minor key.
Yes.
Which sounds very interesting. It probably means a few of the songs are going to be pretty pop punky and upbeat, and then a few of the songs are probably going to be very, like, let it enfold you-y. Although You're Cute When You Scream is apparently in the major key, so maybe the keys just mean nothing.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just really cool that it's just half the albums in major and half the albums in minor, so it's gonna be some pretty cool storytelling and just different concepts. And apparently, according to them, they are this is like almost kind of like a spiritual successor, they said, to the Still Searching album. The Still Searching album. Like, they're kind of putting, like, because, like, apparently Still Searching was a concept album too, and they're going to be putting that quote unquote story to rest with this album. So it's gonna be really a year.
I'm interested. I like when you said it was gonna be like the sequel to Still Searching. I was kind of like, because it's like I feel like every band says that when they come out with a new album, they're like, oh yeah, this sounds like. It's like, insert the name of their most popular album here.
Yes.
So I was kind of sitting there like, but then when you, like, actually talking about continuing the story and everything, like, it has me interested.
Yeah, and also coming from Mr. Buddy Nielsen as well, that I'm also more excited for that there's going to be new music from his side project called Speak the Truth, Even If Your Voice Shakes, which was a side project he had with him and 3 guys from Finch.
Oh.
So I'm also excited to hear that as well.
That's something that I did not know existed until right now, and I already want to listen to it.
They have a full-blown album back from, like, 2016, I believe.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, it was pretty much like if you miss Old Senses Fail and you didn't like how they went straight up, like, truly straight up metalcore for those, like, 5-6 years, this was like your outlet almost.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out because I do enjoy Old Senses Fail quite a bit.
And Finch too. I mean,
and Finch. I mean, I think if I'm being honest, I only really liked their first album. I don't
Me
really
too.
I don't really know anything off any of their other albums, but
All you
they're
need to know is that it does exist. That what it is to burn is one of the best post-hardcore albums.
yeah, what it is to burn is amazing. So
Yeah.
I'm excited.
hmm
So yeah,
So that's
that's
what I'm looking forward to 2021 at least.
yeah, me too. Now that we're done talking about full albums, let's talk about songs. Um, first, let's just if you had to pick one specific song from the full year, what would you say your favorite is?
Well, I mentioned this when I was talking about the New Found Glory album and Greatest of All Time by them.
Okay. Um.
And other, I guess, contenders for that would have been a Concert for Aliens, uh, When Lovers and Needles Collide by If I Die First, and then honorable mentioned, I also enjoy There's No Basement in the Alamo and Masquerade by Mest as well. So I guess there's the top five.
Okay. For me, I think it probably would be "Concert for Aliens" because that song just blew me away the first time I heard it. I was like, because when Bloody Valentine came out, I was kind of like, I was like, okay, yeah, it's cool. I like it because it's MGK trying out a different genre that I love very much. Maybe this will bring some attention to the genre, but as a song, it was kind of like, eh. But then Concert for Aliens came out. I'm like, yo, if this wasn't MGK, if this was just like some random assholes in my daily mix, I would still love this fucking song. Concert for Aliens is just a banger. Um, and then some other songs I also, really like. Like my favorites off of Goldfinger's album, Infinite, Nothing to Me, Cannonball. Um, I also really like the song I Don't Even Like You by Lil Lotus, which did come out in 2020. For some reason, I was thinking it came out in like 2016, but I was wrong. It came out in 2020, at least according to Spotify. Um, for the sheer fact of it's an emo rap song, but it's kind of what I'm talking about when I talk about emo rap. Is it's pop punk just with a hip hop beat to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way he's singing, I could even hear some some like palm mutes in there on the guitar. Like it's very much in the spirit of pop punk, just with a hip hop beat because it's 2020. That's up there. But if I had to pick a definite favorite, it would probably be Concert for Aliens. Which is
All
also,
right.
I think, why I have such a hard time picking and choosing between Tickets to My Downfall and Never Look Back as my favorite album of the year. Is because I think MGK might take the cake on favorite song, but overall, Goldfinger might take the cake on favorite album, like as far as music goes.
Okay, I mean that definitely makes a lot of sense because, as I mentioned earlier, the MGK album, there's like two or three songs on there that I think are legitimately amazing, but the rest of it kind of falls flat, I guess, in the grand scheme of things for me.
And I mean, I definitely agree. There's a few songs on that album that I'll probably never listen to, but there is. I don't want to rehash what I was saying earlier, but for what it's doing for the genre, it gets elevated quite a bit to possibly my favorite album of the year. Um, but now that now that we got the positives out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the negatives. Out of all the songs you heard this year in 2020, out of all the songs that came out in 2020, what would you say your least favorite is?
Once again, I said it's kind of hard for me to like things I don't really got on my way to listen to stuff I don't like. Uh, I think me and you both know where we're going with this one. Uh,
Okay.
I mean, you know how anybody who heard episode 3,
Oh,
you know
I
how
know
I
exactly what you're gonna say. Before you say it, I just want to give a little preface to this because I did want to talk about obviously with quarantine being a thing, quite a few bands put out songs about quarantine, and most of them were pretty awful. But I think the one that takes the cake for both of us for worst quarantine song, worst song of the year, I'll let you take the floor.
Quarantine by Blink 182. Uh,
Yeah. It's kind of
I mean,
telling when Punchline made a quarantine song, but Blink 182's I think is worse. Punchline, it's just like if you've been following them for the past 5 years, you know what you're getting into. It's definitely got a little bit of an indie vibe to it, which I'm not crazy about indie, but Punchline gets saved by it's modern Punchline. You know what you're getting into. But
yeah.
yeah, Blink's Quarantine. Ooh, I'll let you start off before I just rip it to
I
shreds.
mean, well, first, a little background that Matt Skiba was not on the track
I remember you
on
were
the.
telling me it sparked many rumors that he had left the band.
Yes, but it's just simply because, quote unquote, I think this is fucking bullshit because he has that Blink money and he was in an Alkaline Trio. Most of these guys have home studios, regardless how big they are. I mean, the early November guys have home studios, and they never got to even the close to the popularity of Alkaline Trios. I don't believe this crap, but apparently Skibo is absent on the track due to lack of a home recording studio, which I don't truly believe because he has a lot of fucking money. Uh, Later that month, Hoppe said there's a new EP scheduled for late 2020. That was a lie, just like his entire career. It's now 2021. And the thing with like that, it's just like the problem with Blink, and we talked about this like all the time. I think you're gonna mention that. It's like they want to prove so hard that they're not just doing it for the radio. So when they do release something more on the punk side, it's like pure like 1996 Offspring punk.
Yeah,
It
it's
just sounds like Mark Hoppus is just throwing a hissy fit with a bunch of satire over it, and it's just I get the message
yeah,
he's
and
sending it, but it's just like a whiny little prick he is. Dude, he had $90 million in the bank. Why are you depressed? Nintendo sends you free Nintendo Switches all the time. And it's like once again, it's like
well,
the 20 other people help you write this song too.
yeah, I think my issue with the song is purely yeah, and the lyrical content, which I don't really look for lyrics, so it's got to be really bad for me to notice. Which I can see people saying it in the comments section now that it's supposed to be a satire on people who just want to go out and party and shit, and that may be true, but the lines "we don't need social distance, we don't need old people" still came out of that man's mouth. He thought this would be fire in a song. Okay, doesn't matter if it's satire or not. He thought he did something with that one.
And guess what? This a a they had a co-writer on there and a producer with Brian Lee. So I mean, God forbid he writes a Offspring song by himself.
And that's my next big point is, as you mentioned, ever since Nine, ever since the album Nine, their songs have either been pop or punk. Never both. Well, sometimes, but I would say Pin the Grenade is a pop punk song. That's probably why it's one of the only songs on the album that I enjoy. But a majority of their songs from 9 and on is either pop or punk. Like, Dark Side, pretty poppy. Generational Divide, just a punk song. No riffs, just the same three chords. Mark Hoppus saying the same thing over and over again. Quarantine, sounds like the Offspring. Fucking, it's just even California is better because California just sounds like, that pure John Feldman factory sound, but at least it sounds like pop punk. Generic pop punk is still pop punk, just a little generic.
Yes.
But yeah, it's probably definitely takes the cake of my least favorite song of 2020, even beating out Punchline's. I forget the name. It's like Just Stay Home or something, which, I mean, I definitely agree with the message. I agree with Punchline's message. The song, it's a little on the indie side, but again, as I said the last like 3 times, if you've listened to Punchline in the last 5 years, you kind of know what you're getting into. You know it's not going to be on par with Action or the Rewind EP or what's the name of their EP from 2001, the one that's not even on Spotify. I think it's like Motion Picture EP or something like that.
Oh, Google it, and I'm gonna go search it for you.
Yeah, you search it because that EP was amazing. But my thing is, you know you're not getting something like that. So like there's nothing really to worry about. But with Quarantine, it's just Mark Hoppus trying to be edgy, trying to make a point through satire, and it just does not work. And even if the line is satire, there's something ironic about a man in his late 40s talking about we don't need old people. Granted, I know 40 is still pretty young in the grand scheme of things, but well, he's not 17 talking about we don't need old people.
Oh, just to confirm it, it's called Major Motion Picture, by the way.
Thank you. I couldn't think of the name of it, but there's some really good songs on that EP. I don't think it's as good as the Rewind EP, but it's neck and neck. But yeah, so I think Quarantine takes the cake for my least favorite song of 2020. I don't think I heard a single Quarantine song that I liked, but Blink-182's is probably the worst one. And yeah, and there's no Matt Skiba on it, which I guess you could also argue they just didn't need him on the track because it's pretty basic, because it is just a punk song. And yeah, as I've said before, I'm not very crazy about punk in the first place. That's not going to change just because Blink-182 is doing it. I still don't really like punk all that much. And yeah, it's pretty awful.
Yeah, it's not good. Anytime we talk about old Blink, I mean new Blink, I go on this tyrant. So I pretty much said what I always needed to say in the past 6 months. So
Yeah. So I think that pretty much wraps up my 2020 that I wanted. Is there anything else you want to talk about that happened in 2020? Like any artists, any like music, any like events?
musically speaking, I think we covered it all. And yeah, I mean, there's really nothing else for me to dive deeper into. And hopefully, there's going to be cool releases coming out. New shows, and yeah. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, I remain very hopeful for 2021. Very hopeful that pop punk will come out of hiding, which I mean it already kind of did in 2020, but 2021 is when it'll really
With shows.
explode with new artists. Even if it's not bands, even if it is just artists like Jaden or like MGK. I'm just ready to see some new pop punk artists. I am very ready to go to a pop punk show again because I don't think we've been to one at all in 2020. I mean,
Nope.
obviously not once the world locked down, but I don't think we saw anything in January or February, if I'm not
Nope.
mistaken.
All we saw, the last concert I've been to was the Starting Line in late 19.
Which would be the same for me because you're who I go to shows with.
Yeah. So there's that.
I do believe I was planning to go see Def Leppard and I think Motley Crue and someone else. But that obviously got canceled as well. And I was looking very forward to going to see Newfound Glory and Simple Plan. Again, obviously that's didn't happen. Well, it's still happening, so it's not. I don't want to say it's not happening, but it didn't happen yet. It's been postponed.
I was also hoping to see a Silverstein in 2020 because they were going to go on tour with like Hawthorne and Census Fail.
Oh yeah, I wanted to see that too. Now I forgot about it until you brought it up, and now you're making me remember. I wanted to see that as well.
Yes, that's just like a post-hardcore like super show.
Oh, I would have loved it.
Yeah, but yeah. So other than that, there was really nothing else I want to bring up that we haven't talked about. So, if there's anything else?
So
I'm good.
yeah, I guess that does it for today's episode. Again, I'll probably say this for the next like 2-3 episodes at the start and end of every podcast. We will be moving these episodes to their own channel. If you're watching this on that channel, if you're watching this after February 1st, then you don't have to do anything because it's already been done. But in the coming weeks, once I create the channel and all that, I will link it in the description so you guys can go subscribe and make sure you don't miss any content. These episodes will still be up on this channel until February 1st. We will still be uploading new episodes until February 1st, and then we will I'll probably just for archival purposes, I probably won't delete the videos, but I will make them private. And then I'll make them public on the other channel, which I'm not naming it yet because, like I said, it hasn't been created yet. So I don't want to say the Pop Punk Podcast and then I go to create it and the name's already been taken. So I'm not going to say a name yet, but yeah, so just be on the lookout for that. As soon as the channel's created, I will be uploading them all to schedule for like February 1st. And then February 2nd, that new episode will be on. There's really not a whole lot I could say. I didn't already say at the start of the episode. But I'll keep you guys posted in the coming weeks. And yeah, in the meantime, you guys take it easy. We will be back next Tuesday at noon. Stay beautiful, motherfuckers. Peace.